You're about to hear a brief story about two people and their approach to achieving financial freedom. And from this story, you might just bridge that gap between the thinking that separates those who achieve financial freedom and those who spend their lives just to work and they give up all of their time for jobs that they may or may not enjoy. Because there's just a very small difference in the way of thinking that separates someone who can make their money work for them versus someone who gives up all their time to make their money. And more often than not, they give up too much time for too little money. But before we get into the stories, let's quickly examine two things. First, let's look at what financial freedom means for you. Yes, you. And not my definition of financial freedom. Second, we'll consider what it means to live to work. To start, looking at financial freedom, we are not talking about tricks to get rich or anything like that in this video. What we want to know about financial freedom is ultimately what financial freedom means to you. Doesn't matter what financial freedom means to me, the narrator, or anyone else. What matters is what you think about being, doing, and having when you think about financial freedom. So say tomorrow you went all in on a stock or cryptocurrency and it just kept going up and up and up. And it reached a point where you felt confident it was enough to consider yourself financially free. How much money would that be? And more importantly, now that you don't necessarily have to trade your time for money in a job you may or may not enjoy, what would you do? Would you travel the world? Would you quit your job, or would you go in and ask for a promotion? Throw the biggest party? Buy all your family members new cars? Pay off your debt? At some level, financial freedom means you can buy a lot of things and experiences. Sure, that's great. But even more precious, more valuable to many, many people is the question, what would you do with your time? Start your own business maybe? Go on an African safari? Take time to write a book? Become a sculptor? Pursue a lost or forgotten passion? Plant a garden? What would you do with your time? Think about that for a moment. And your idea of what financial freedom means could change over time. But now, for the purpose of this video, we have a general idea of what financial freedom means for you. You might be thinking, all this wishing and dreaming is good and all, but I have to work. I have bills to pay and mouths to feed and things to keep up. All this dreaming and thinking ain't helping anyone. So let's quickly consider the idea of what it means to live just so you can work. There's a great book by the late J. Paul Getty titled How to Be Rich, His Formulas. J. Paul Getty was at one time considered one of the richest men in the world, and he was one of the first billionaires. And in the book, Getty often mentions his lack of time to live, having not remembered a single day in many years without being interrupted for his business. He then goes on to mention his happy cousin Hal Seymour, who often wrote letters to Getty starting with, "To the richest man in the world, from the wealthiest." So Getty often felt his cousin Hal had a level of freedom that allowed him to live and experience a different life with enough money to keep him happy, while Getty felt he missed out on many things because he focused so much on his business and the job of being one of the richest men in the world at the time. And I get it. A very rich man complaining about being rich, wah, big deal, right? Well, it can be a big deal because it's the essence of the story that can affect you. Because if you are trading all of your time and living to work in a job you don't like, where your boss doesn't want to promote you, and you're just hoping they don't fire you before your next paycheck, it doesn't matter whether you're making minimum wage or six figures, you probably don't feel financially free. And at least the person working minimum wage probably doesn't have a lifestyle that demands a six-figure salary who fears losing everything if they lose their job. At least at minimum wage, you have an opportunity to switch careers. There is some irony here, but we're not saying minimum wage jobs are your path to financial freedom. A lot of money easily makes situations more tolerable. We're merely expressing an example of living and working versus living to work. And living to work should not be confused with feeling alive every day you go to work. And we're not by any means criticizing any choice of jobs, career, or methods of making money, putting food on a table, or earning a living. That's not what we're looking to do. But if you are unhappy or worse about the work you do, and you feel unfulfilled and sense an urge to do something greater, and your job is the complete opposite of almost everything that makes you happy, then it's time to think. And you're watching the right video. So now that you've got your idea of what financial freedom looks like for you, and we're on the same page about the gap between living and working versus living just so you can work doing something you don't enjoy, which is not really fun for anybody, it's time to dive into a story about two types of business people and consider how a very simple shift in the way you think about making money can be the difference between financial freedom or putting yourself into another job you may or may not like. First, let's consider the story of Jimmy. Jimmy's an ambitious guy who had a great corporate job and saved up a good amount of money wanting to start a gift shop someday. One day, Jimmy takes a portion of his savings of $150,000 to start his gift shop. He worked very hard, had many sleepless hours, started to get out of shape, and was feeling burnt out by the first 8 months. He hired employees and even had family help out at the business sometimes, but he just wasn't loving it. At the end of the first year, he was only able to pay himself $67,500. Sure, he was incredibly proud of his work, but he was almost always stressed. He was feeling incredibly exhausted, stuck, and unsure what to do at times, and even planned to get out of his business. Did he have time to spend the money? Did he save it, invest in something else? Who knows? It was a tough time for Jimmy. And we don't know if he ever closes his gift shop or whether he's able to turn it around and launch it into a huge globally known enterprise and publicly traded company so he could tell his rise to riches story. And Jimmy's story would be completely different if he absolutely loved his gift shop. And this isn't a story about persistence or working hard or anything like that. Jimmy's story is simply here to compare to Martha's story. Now, let's look at Martha's story. Martha was very much like Jimmy. She achieved quickly, worked her way up in corporate, but felt another calling. She saved a lot of money just like Jimmy and always knew she wanted to do something else, but didn't know what specifically. One day, someone contacted her about a business opportunity seeking an investment. The investment was $150,000 with an estimated return of $40,000 per year. After taking some time to learn about the opportunity, the project, the other investors, the managers, and more, she decided to take a portion of her savings and invest $150,000 in the business. Over the next year, Martha kept busy. She started looking at other business opportunities. She kept her job, but then eventually left and started consulting work. She learned a foreign language, dated, and some more activities. She even made time for therapists to take care of her mental health. For her new business venture, Martha had to go to meetings occasionally. But after the first year, she was excited because she made $50,000 back instead of $40,000. So with all the what-ifs and assuming all taxes were accounted for, Jimmy and Martha were both ambitious business people who made a $150,000 investment. Jimmy earned $67,500 back, while Martha earned $50,000. Despite being the same investment size and Martha making less money from their investment, their lifestyles were completely different. It's easy to think that becoming an entrepreneur and starting a business will automatically make someone financially free. But it's also valuable to consider the story of Jimmy and Martha and how they approached business and growing their income. It's obvious. Jimmy's story and Martha's story here were crafted to contrast the differences. Would things have been different if Jimmy absolutely loved his gift shop and didn't feel stressed out all the time, diminishing his mental and physical health? What if no one ever contacted Martha about the investment opportunity? How about if Martha got too comfortable and started to lose valuable working skills and she was just sitting around waiting for her investment to pay off? There's many what ifs, but the only difference between Jimmy and Martha is ultimately a simple shift in thinking. Jimmy created another job for himself. Martha discovered a great investment and created a new income stream for herself. Now, whether Jimmy would have taken that investment opportunity instead, who knows? But if you were to take a little bit of each story, applying the work ethic of Jimmy and the investment opportunity that came across Martha's, where are those types of opportunities popping up in your life? And now that you've heard all of this, how do you feel about financial freedom?